Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight on an Amouage. And you guys know sometimes I get on these kicks where, I get into a house and I just want to do video after video after video on them. And if you know my taste, you know that Amouage is one of my all-time favorite houses of all time. And something happened recently that has kind of got me back in the mood of reviewing Amouage. And that is whenever you go to the Amouage website and you go to the different collections, all right? One of the collections that Christopher Chong set up during his time as creative director at Amouage was the Opus collection. And it's actually one of the things that the new Fishman has sort of taken and run with, right? So many new Opus fragrances have come out under his guidance. One is the newest one, which is Opus 15 King Blue for $500 US. And then, of course, some of the, and I did review that. I also reviewed the Silver Oud, which I think is one of the best releases that came out under him. And so this is Opus 13. I also reviewed Opus 14, which is Royal Tobacco, which I actually really enjoyed. And if money was no issue and I could just have every single perfume I like, I would have a full bottle of this instead of a decant. I do think it's full bottle worthy. But sadly, whenever you go to the Amouage website and you look at the Opus line, even though the new creative director has sort of continued the line, there's very few. There's only 6 Opuses left that you can buy. And it's the King Blue, 15, 14 Royal Tobacco, 13 Silver Oud, the one I showed here that I had the full bottle of. I've reviewed this. Opus 12 Rose Incense, which I have never smelled. Opus 5, which is this one right here, but it's in the new style bottle, and they've put a name on this, which is called Woods Symphony. Although they do say that in the review we're going to talk about today, Opus 1, in one of the verbiage on the website, they used to say that Opus 1, the base of Opus 1, was a symphony of woods. So they named Opus 5 Woods Symphony, interestingly enough, which I do kind of agree with the name. I don't like the names, period. I don't think there should be names with the Opus line. The whole point with the Opus line was if you go back to the old Amouage styles, right, and you see the fact that they used to have, interlude man, interlude woman, right? They used to have journey man, journey woman, so forth and so on. Well, the Opus line was set up as a unisex line. So it was Opus 1, Opus 2, there were no names. These new naming things is a new phenomenon with the Opus line. And finally, the final Opus that you can still buy is called Opus 7, which I have many, many of these decants. I've got like maybe 50 mil of these vintage decants in the older style decants of Opus 7. It's now called Reckless Leather. This is an amazing fragrance. And that's it. And so what makes this, what has sort of prompted this review, number one, is that my good friend Allie strikes again, and she sent me some, she got the ball rolling on the Amouage reviews because she sent me a decant of Overture Woman, and I was head over heels for that. Again, if money was no issue, I would own a bottle of Overture Woman for sure in the collection, 100%. That is full bottle worthy, one of the best fragrances the great Annick Minardo has ever done, and probably the best Amouage that ever came out under the guidance of the Fishman. And so this is Amouage. We're going to talk about Amouage Opus 1 today. So I really don't know what to say about this, whether it's discontinued or, still available for purchase, because if you go to Parfumo, which I love, it says it's still being marketed by Sabco Group Oman Perfumery. But if you actually go to the Oman or the Amouage website and you go to the collections, there is no Opus 1. There's no Opus 2, there's no Opus 3, there's no Opus 4, there's no Opus 6, which is probably one of my favorites from the collection. There's no Opus 8, no 9, no 10, no 11, just unbelievable. If the fact that I'm not seeing them on this website means they're discontinued, I am absolutely shocked. Absolutely shocked that is the case. So apparently also the other thing that really worries me is if you go look for the sampler set of the Opus collection, they only list 6 fragrances inside of that sampler set, and it's the 6 that I just quoted you. They only list 6, and so that really makes me think that he has killed these fragrances, which, if that's the case, I will tell you this. So many people like to know whether, you know, it's my favorite, I hate it, I love a perfume. Opus 1, before I even get into it, I will tell you this. The Opus collection is so strong, and I have not smelled them all yet, but I've smelled most of them. This is one of my least favorite from the collection, and yet I would still own a bottle of this. That's how solid this is. And so let's talk a little bit about the perfume. It was made in 2010. Obviously, it's the very first Opus in the library collection. These were meant to sort of look like books. So this sat inside of a packaging that almost made it look like a book on the shelf, okay? And the little blurb on Opus 1 tells you exactly the mindset that Christopher Chong was in whenever he created the Opus collection. So it says, the narrative, here's the blurb for Opus 1. The narrative olfactory evolution of this glorious Chypre fragrance was inspired by the start of a pilgrimage in search of knowledge. The start of a pilgrimage in search of knowledge. Beautiful write-up. And going on a pilgrimage in search of knowledge. So, very bold statement to say about a perfume. But this was actually done by Danielle Morial, who worked on Memoir Woman, which is another one of the Amouages that if I had unlimited resources, I would own a full bottle of Memoir Woman, and assisted Cecile Zarokian in Epic Woman, which is probably one of the best women's Amouages, if you will. And I have a review, or I have a comparison of Epic Woman EDP, which I have here, versus Epic 56, the exceptional extrait that they put out. So, if you're interested in learning more about Epic, check that out. But I do think that was, her best works were Memoir Woman, which I would love a full bottle of, and Epic Woman. And then this is probably third, tied with Lyric Woman. But really, she hasn't done much else. You know, she worked on Amouage early 2008, 2009, 2010, and then just like fell off, the face of the earth. I have no clue what is going on with Danielle Morial, but that's pretty much it, right? But she created something special here. So obviously this was done in conjunction with kind of Christopher Chong's tutelage. And so this fragrance is, the way that I would describe this fragrance, this is actually a really tough one for me to describe because to me, this is a perfect example of why Amouage is one of my favorite niche houses of all time, okay? Because it opens up with this patented Middle Eastern style cardamom. And the cardamom is there from the beginning. You get it going into the dry down as the florals really, well, you get it into the mid as the florals really, really amp up. So upon first spray, you get a little bit of this lotion-like smell, okay? And it's a mixture of cardamom, plum, and bitter orange. But the plum is nowhere near as strong. Like if you're thinking vintage, old school Chypres from the past where the plum is really amped up like Rochas Femme or something like that, the plum in this is nowhere near on the level of something like Rochas Femme. The plum in Opus 1 is really kind of more for rounding effects, okay? It gives a little bit of that dark, mysterious vibe, but the two notes in the top that you should focus on are the cardamom and the bitter orange, or as was written in the little write-up, bigarade, okay? So the bitter orange and the cardamom are sort of the two notes that that jump out in this sort of lotion-like smell, okay? And it's a little bit of a weird opening because when I first smelled this, I was actually very let down. This is the third time I've worn it to bed, by the way. So I'm not claiming to be some sort of expert on this. This is all the juice I have. You can see I've given it a fair amount of wear. But I would never have smelled this if not for Allie, so thank you, Allie. But I think it's maybe a mixture of some of the florals starting to kind of seep their way, mixing with the spices. But, you know, it smells like a little bit of a oriental floral spicy, okay? Oriental floral spicy is maybe how I would describe it. And, you know, you're thinking that you've probably smelled something like this before with this Middle Eastern style spices and fruits and florals. And that you're a little let down. So the first time I smelled this, I was thinking, you know what? This is not for me. It's not my thing. It is extremely floral, very, very floral. And in fact, I disagree with some of the reviews on this. There's a lot of folks that say that many of the other florals outside of Ylang Ylang and are secondary florals. But for me, every time I've worn it now, and again, this is the third time, the tuberose jumps right in front of those other florals, and I get the tuberose first. Now, is it a slightly modern tuberose where it's not ultra camphoraceous and, you know, it doesn't have that huge green, you know, tuberose is a weird one because sometimes it can be a little milky and extremely green and almost eucalyptus-like in smell. And this one doesn't have as much of that green camphor eucalyptus smell, but you can tell it's tuberose, right? It's sort of like a crystal tuberose, if you will. It feels like some of those greener, more camphoraceous aspects have been removed, okay? But every time I wear it, the tuberose jumps to the forefront, and I get that flower first, ahead of the other flowers, and it's a big floral heart, by the way. So it's jasmine, tuberose, ylang ylang, rose, and lily of the valley, okay? And so what's funny is, like I said, first time I smelled this, I was like, oh no, I can completely see why no one talks about Opus 1. The opening is, with that weird lotion thing and flowers, but what ends up happening is, especially after the first hour ticks into the second hour, is that sort of, wow, it's nice, but it's not really for me thing, turns into this very well executed florals to the point where you almost have to admire the florals in this. Like if you're, remember, this is unisex. So I think this is unisex leaning feminine. But if you're a guy looking for a floral fragrance that no one else is wearing, that is extremely high quality, very well done, and you would have no problem wearing it as a guy, I can definitely recommend Opus 1. The florals in here are outstanding. Like if you want to study how tuberose and ylang ylang and rose and jasmine and lily of the valley sort of all work together, Opus 1 is executed to perfection. And so the more and more I wore this, the more and more I thought that the florals went from just nice to expertly crafted, okay? It went from this is not for me to damn, this is impressive, like that, you know, extremely impressed with this fragrance. And my God, I mean, the florals are extremely impressive. And I'm sitting here smelling it going, why was I saying this wasn't for me? Because, I mean, it's just expertly crafted. The florals that stand out to my nose, of course, the tuberose is the first one you're going to get with that slightly camphoraceous aspect, but it's like a crystal tuberose. And, you know, the green touches of some of the tuberose notes, when they do come through, they feel very well blended, okay? And so there's a little bit of this banana-like ylang ylang that starts to wrestle control away from the tuberose as you're smelling it. It's almost like smelling a custard, okay? So what ends up happening is that lotion note in the top with the cardamom and the bitter orange ends up almost turning into this custard-like ylang ylang. Once that first tuberose note hits your nose, 15, 20, 30 minutes after that, the ylang ylang wrestles control away from the tuberose, and it turns into this banana-like custard smell. So the lotion sort of evolves into this banana custard. Slightly mild, slightly milky, and that's sort of the aspect of the floral that you're going to get with that bitter citrus orange note that, you know, once it hits that floral mid-phase within the first half an hour to an hour, let's say, once the big floral heart sort of takes control, what ends up happening is that bitter orange, that bigarad note, almost feels like it starts turning into an orange blossom, okay? And that's sort of the weird part. It's almost like there's a little bit of this orange blossom neroli thing going on. Even though there's not, it seems that way because of the way that the florals all blend together. And it's already a huge floral heart, right? So imagine adding a little bit of this clean, you know, neroli that is slightly soapy. And if you like soapy fragrances that have a little bit of a lotiony aspect to it, a little bit of that custardy lotion aspect with the florals and the spices, because remember, the cardamom is present. It really is present. You can pick it out, especially in the beginning. But even into the later dry down, I think the cardamom can still be picked out as a prominent spice. And it literally feels like that bigarade note, that bitter orange, just like melts into it almost feels like it melts into the rest of the florals and creates what gives the impression of a neroli. But there is no neroli. There's rose, there's jasmine, lily of the valley, that kind of thing. The jasmine is slightly indolic. And so even though there's 5 florals listed, it feels like there's like 7 florals listed because of the neroli, you know, with the orange blossom feel, right? So it feels like there's 7 florals. And that also is maybe why it's giving the impression of a lotion in the top, like a somewhat interesting soap. You know, like a soap you would expect to find on your grandmother's sink, right? And yet, even with that reference, this is still a very modern perfume because it's done in an oriental style, right? Because of the citruses, the spices and the plum up top. And then the base is where this fragrance just really blew my mind. So as my sort of, you know, mind was shifting on these florals, like, you know, why don't I like these? I know florals aren't my most favorite thing, but I don't hate them, and this is extremely well executed. This base starts to sort of take over. And the base is where everything changes because it's Gaiac wood, which can come across as like a campfire / barbecue / smoky wood, if you will. So it's Gaiac wood, cedar, frankincense, papyrus, sandalwood, vetiver, tonka bean. And so you can see that is a damn heavy note listing. The problem, I think, for most people is you don't get that until, or you don't get it heavier and heavier into the fragrance until 2 or 3 hours in. So if you're someone that sprays and sniffs and you do what I did, you're going to go, nope, not for me. If you don't give this a chance to dry down, you're going to overlook the beauty of this fragrance. I think this is one you might have to come back to multiple times. You might have to come back to over and over again to realize just how beautiful this perfume is. The florals, you know, as the hours tick by, start to give off this slightly indolic because of the jasmine, but also balsamic-like smell. So it's a little bit balsamic. It's also fresh because of that neroli, lotiony smell. Yeah, it's almost like, you know, it's almost like there's a component of freshness that just sort of works its way into the dry down as the hours tick by. And the Lily of the Valley is slightly powdery, okay? And as the spices burn off and the florals kind of take over, it is a fragrance that I think you can really pinpoint. The thing about this fragrance that surprised me, I would say, is how much, as the hours ticked by, I was like, wow, the quality. I mean, you can pinpoint the beauty of the rose, the Lily of the Valley. There's separation between the notes, okay? So the florals, even though florals aren't my favorite thing, I almost have to just look at this and just almost like give it an applaud for the way it was designed. The jasmine, the tuberose, the ylang-ylang. Beautiful, even though it's not my thing. Beautiful. And that's kind of how I really feel about it. The heavier bass notes, when the heavier bass notes start to come in, the Gaiac wood, the papyrus. Papyrus has this smoky, papery-like smell, which I love. And it's also slightly earthy, right? And the Gaiac wood adds that smoky barbecue feel. The sandalwood is very prominent. It's a beautiful sandalwood note. and it just acts like this amazing base for the florals to sit on. So I would consider this a floral chypre. Okay, if I was going to really consider, if I was really going to put this in a category, this would be a floral chypre. And it would be a floral chypre executed in the vintage style, but also in the slightly Middle Eastern Oriental style. It's not as Oriental as something like this, okay, because the Oriental notes that you see in the base of this, they act as like a buffer to the flowers so that it's not too heavy, too floral. Right? It's not too, your nose can kind of jump over and appreciate the spice, or jump over and appreciate the woods. Like I said, in the original marketing of Opus 1, they had this as a symphony of woods in the base, because it has the gaiac wood, the cedar wood, the sandalwood. And so, you know, it's a fragrance that I think that if you forced me to rank the Opus line, would unfortunately come somewhere towards the bottom, like I said. But it's also one of those fragrances where I would totally have it in my collection. Absolutely, I would own this. If money was no issue, I would love a bottle of this because of just how well it's done, and because of the fact that when I look at the Amouage website, not seeing this on the Opus line really kind of makes me sad. It makes me sad for the future of Amouage. I'm not going to bitch about where Amouage is going anymore. I've done enough of that, but it's something that, you know, I would love to have a bottle of before prices go crazy. Once current stock runs out, and I think people realize that the greatness of Amouage is in its past, unfortunately. So so yes, that's sort of my take on Opus 1. If you have experience with it, you know, this is just supposed to be like a late night insight video, just to sort of share my thoughts, put my thoughts out there. I really, really came around to Opus 1. The first wearing, I was a little bit suspect, but man, it's beautiful. It really is just gorgeous, lovely stuff. You know, if you're looking for a floral fragrance off the beaten path, I could easily recommend Opus 1. So again, Allie, thank you for sharing this with me. It's been a pleasure to get to know this. We're going to do these hopefully in order. So Opus 2, Opus 3, Opus 4, Opus 5, you know, those videos will come. And so, you know, if you have any experience with Opus 1, do leave a message. If you know, have any insight into whether, you know, these opuses that are not on the Amouage website are truly discontinued, let me know. But I have a sickening feeling that unfortunately they are. So anyways, thanks for watching. Cheers, guys. Have a good one. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.